Let's kick off today's review with a big thank you to Amelia from Strike Media for giving me an early screener to a movie that's going to be in select cinemas on May 31st here in the UK called Tell That to the Winter Sea. I didn't know anything about this going into it, and what's my thoughts after I checked this one out? Well, stick around and let's talk about it. Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome to the channel and thank you for taking your own time out to check out this review. My name's Mike. If you're brand new here or if you're coming back, welcome once again. So, Tell That to the Winter Sea. I only got sent the kind of stills and the poster and of course an early screener for this movie, but that's kind of all I knew. Now this is directed by Jaclyn Bethany, who co-writes this movie with Greta Bellamacina. And Greta Bellamacina is our main character called Jo, who in 1 week's time she was due to be married, but in that meantime she is reunited with her friend Scarlet, and this friend is all about rekindling a teenage friendship but also a teenage romance. So this is an intriguing one, but ultimately left me kind of frustrated in the fact that I believe this wasted its true potential it could have really had. Now, before we go into the negatives and why it didn't necessarily work for me, let's dive into those positives. Firstly, the cinematography is really nice. It's very crisp and you really get a feel for this kind of countryside and this really ambience of a place that feels kind of by itself, a little bit secluded, but in a good way because it's an absolutely beautiful home that is used throughout, whether it's a scene in the kitchen, whether it's an exterior shot, however they choose to capture the footage, it's done really well and every single shot throughout is shot really well. So definitely big props in the cinematography department, and I think the acting overall, especially by Greta Bellamacina, I would say is done okay. I can't say that any of the ladies here do a bad job because they absolutely don't. I think ultimately where the problem lies, which this is kind of where I go into the negatives, because this movie has so many messages it wants to throw in to a 90-minute script and runtime, and I don't feel as if it works because it feels like they're trying to cram too much in, but also some messages to kind of shove down people's throats, which ultimately I don't think works. Because, for example, you've got messages here as like teen romance, right? We've all probably had a teen romance, or maybe a romance, you know, maybe our first ever love or first ever crush, etc. We've always had that in our respective lives, so of course we can kind of draw that back as a memory and be like, oh, do you remember the time that, you know, you maybe had a crush on this person or on that person? And I definitely remember a couple of crushes that I had in school. Definitely a different story for a different day, but this movie at parts, when it explores about this ex-teen romance, made me think of that, and it's not so much bad memories, it's just a case of it brought those back, and I like that. I was like, okay, well, I remember that time in my life, now that at that point I was like 15, 16 years old, and now I'm 33 as I'm recording this review, so it gave me a chance to look back at that part of my life and realize, okay, well, since then I've grown as an individual. I've changed way differently back then. For example, I used to be really shy, but now I'm actually quite a confident person. The problem is where this lies. We are supposed to be invested so much in Jo and Scarlet, right? Amber Anderson and Greta Bellamacina, and their ex-teen romance and how they've got from point A to like point B in the present. But this movie spends so much time trying to berate men. And yeah, you might be thinking, well, Mike, this is kind of like a feministic movie. It's a feminism tale. It's, you know, maybe one for the women. And I'm not going to say and sit here and say like, yeah, that's not true, because it probably is. However, there's nowhere on the poster that says not for men, right? And I was sent a screener for this. But putting that aside, the point I'm trying to get at is I'm all for feminism. I'm all for women empowerment. Absolutely. I want there to be more of that in movies or in life, in jobs. Any job you go into, that would be absolutely fantastic. I've not got a problem with that in the slightest. The problem I do have with this movie, though, addressing that, is Joe is supposed to get married in a week's time to a guy, I believe he's called John. Now, you never see John on the screen, right? There's no male cast in this movie. But every time someone talks about him, primarily everyone but Scarlet, they always say, oh yeah, he's a great guy. He's been around a lot of women in his life and he's really grown and matured because he's been around them. And he brings out the best in a lot of people. And, you know, he's quite in touch with his feminine side. But then they spend a lot of time to berate men and say, oh yeah, well, you know, don't let a man hold you back. Don't let them do X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like, well, hold on. This movie's premise is supposed to be about Joe and Scarlet and their ex-teen romance, and then maybe exploring those feelings, and maybe Scarlet not necessarily being over that 100% compared to Joe, who is a little bit because she is going to marry a man, right? So the movie spends so much time to try to rekindle their romance, but then it berates men in dialogue whenever it gets a chance to, and I'm like, there's no men cast around here. Like, you know, it's not as if they've done something really bad in this movie to be like, oh yeah, you know, do you remember that time John cheated? And, you know, like, yeah, you could maybe berate him then because he's done something bad, but everyone paints him out to be a really great guy. So I'm just like, well, why are we having this dialogue here where it seems as if this is just kind of like a bashing movie on a particular sex when it shouldn't be, and it should just be more about exploring a teen romance, their friendship, how they've maybe, you know, fell out during this time, how they've got to the point where they currently are now. Like, why she invited Scarlett all the way from her teenage years, which was over like 10 years or more ago, and now having her at a wedding, and at this point it doesn't seem as if she has seen her in all this time. They don't spend enough time to explore all those different subjects and avenue, but instead decide to go on a tangent to bash a particular sex. And I'm just like, well, it doesn't serve any purpose in the story. It doesn't exactly give it more levity to the story, apart from maybe a little bit of character growth. And ultimately, I felt like this was a movie that ultimately didn't know what it wanted to be, because by the end of it, this 90-minute runtime felt like a 2.5-hour picture, because in this instance also they have moments where they decide to give us flashbacks and flesh out the story of how they got from teenage years to present years, which I appreciate. It's always great to have a flashback to explain where we've got from point A to point B, but the flashbacks, they spend so long on them in particular scenes where the dialogue isn't great, or certain scenes are extended out so much to the point that it kind of just defeats the point of getting to this romance and addressing that either characters have moved on or they haven't. And ultimately it left me frustrated. I was like, why are we wasting so much time on these particular things when really we should be adding meat to the bone to give us a really complex or like straightforward narrative, and a one that we really care about. But ultimately I didn't find myself caring about any character, so in that way the movie failed for me. Do you disagree with my opinion completely, or do you agree? Let's have a discussion down below. As for my score, I'm going to give Tell That to the Winter Sea a 1.5 out of 5. Thank you guys for watching this review. I really appreciate it. Give the video a big thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. Feel free to check out Patreon with the link down below in the description box. You get access to early videos, exclusive videos, and a lot more content you won't see here on YouTube. Big thanks to all my awesome Patrons who help the support channel. In the meantime, click over here and check out some more videos of mine that you may have missed. Till next time, I'll see you guys. I'll be seeing you later.